I wanted to jump on real quick after I cleared my throat. As you know, I hope we have a super exciting webinar today at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So that's 3 Central and 4 Eastern, and you can still, of course, sign up to attend. I'm going to post the link to sign up in the comments as soon as I'm finished here, or I'll try to post it up in the top part. I'll post it somewhere. If you have trouble with it, feel free to email me, Elizabeth at Publish a Profitable Book. But it's going to be real. I'm super excited. We have a lot of people joining, and we're going to be actually writing your book. So I do webinars in different ways for book publishing. Sometimes they're informational, but even when they're informational, I try to get as much action in them as I can, because I want you guys, your time is valuable to you and it's valuable to me. I want you to be able to leave the webinar and feel like you can take at least one step to get you closer to getting your book written and or published than you might have been able to when you woke up that morning, because you have a new piece of information that you didn't know, you've been able to connect some dots, or I've given you an actual task to go out and do such and such to get yourself that much closer. Because at the end of the day, that's what I love doing the most, is empowering you guys. So I'm jumping on in about an hour also. I'm jumping on to a podcast with a friend of mine over in the UK, Mark Dawson. If you are not familiar with Mark, he is someone you might want to get familiar with. He runs a group called the Self-Publishing Formula, which launched, I would say, he'll correct me on this possibly, but about 1.5 years ago. And he was teaching authors specifically how to use Facebook ads. So there are all kinds of courses out there on Facebook and using Facebook ads, but Mark teaches authors specifically. And his course is really robust and quite good. I've taken it. So Mark, along with Elizabeth Ann West, have opened my eyes a lot in this publishing space, because, and I love this, by the way, I love it when I think, well, I'll just speak for myself. I love it when I think, yeah, I don't think you can do that. And then someone goes, yeah, you can, and shows me how. So as you know, I'm predominantly a nonfiction writer. That is my great, I love to write nonfiction. What can I say? All my books so far have been nonfiction. I am working on a novel, but I write fiction differently. And some people, like Mark and Elizabeth, can churn out fiction as effortlessly as I won't say I do it effortlessly, but as I enjoy churning out nonfiction. And it feels effortless, so it's just enjoyable for me. And people used to ask me a couple of years ago, well, can you have this level of success as a self-published author in the fiction realm? And my answer at that time was, I don't think so, because as a nonfiction writer, we have specific niches, right? So when I wrote my book for parents of twins, that's a very specific niche. My third book was geared towards moms. That's a much bigger niche. It's still specific, but it's much broader. So there came down the pike this theory that the more specific your niche, the better chance you actually had of doing really, really well. So when you start thinking about fiction, who's your market? Kind of everybody, kind of. Now, Mark has a specific niche because he is a thriller writer. So he writes in the style of James Patterson, John Grisham, that sort of a thing. Although it's not attorney specific, but he's a thriller writer. Elizabeth Ann West has a specific niche because she writes a genre that I didn't even know existed until a few months ago, Jane Austen fan fiction. I knew about fan fiction, but I didn't fully put 2 and 2 together as to what it was. I actually had to have my kids explain it to me, and I didn't realize that a couple people have told me now that Twilight was actually fan fiction, or 50 Shades of Grey was fan fiction of Twilight, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I'm not putting 2 and 2 together there, but nevertheless. So Elizabeth does Jane Austen fan fiction. So those are actually, I consider them to be specific niches within the fiction realm. You're not just writing a book for all women to read on the beach, which I think would be a little more challenging because you have a ton of competition, and you have a ton of competition with the big 5 houses, right? So Mark and Elizabeth, being so specific about what they do and being really, really good, they are both really good at finding their prospective readers and connecting with them in an authentic and genuine way, which is super important. Elizabeth does that brilliantly. She's almost like a boutique author, in my opinion, because you can just message her, she'll just message you back. And I love that. And it's more common than you would think, but it's still extremely uncommon. At any rate, Mark and Elizabeth have both done very well, and I am speaking financially at this point because they want to make a living as a writer. So they've set that goal for themselves. They have a plan every time they launch a book. They have a launch strategy. They go out and they do it. So I'm going to jump on Mark's podcast here in about an hour, a little less than an hour, a little more than an hour. I don't know. 10 o'clock my time, whatever. And it's not live. It's going to be recorded, but I promise I will share it with you as soon as we launch. We're going to talk about, or as soon as he posts it, we're going to talk about the why, how important it is. And I talk to you guys about this all the time, and we get into it in much more depth in both of my courses. But what is the why behind your book? If you don't know the why, and then if part of the why is to make a living or make some semblance of money, if you do not have a plan to launch, those are the two most important things. So yes, the writing is an art, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And if you want to just keep it for yourself, more power to you. Like, awesome. My novel, I've been keeping to myself for 15 years. But if your goal, if part of your why is to take your message out, take your story out, do other things with it, book speaking engagements, develop products, whatever, you've got to have a plan, and you've got to know what your why is unconditionally, because that's the only way that you can write from an authentic place. And the bottom line is, we live in this incredibly digital, non-personal world. That is how readers connect with authors. That is how readers choose you over someone else, because they feel a connection with you. They identify with you. And that is where things like Facebook Live, Periscope for a bit there, I'm not sure what's going on with that. Instagram has these now you can do these 60-second live things on Instagram. That's where that's become so valuable, because it gives authors and entrepreneurs of any sort, for that matter, a space to connect with their audience in an authentic and genuine way. And in a way where, if I live in Phoenix and you live in Connecticut and we can't get together for coffee, which is what I would prefer, I can connect with you as best I can that way. So speaking of that, the last thing I'm going to touch upon today is I got this great email from Dawn, who is she's a member of Write Your Book in 75 Days right now. She was part of the inaugural launch of that several weeks ago. And Dawn's great. And Dawn said to me, so I'm almost finished with my outline, and here's the thing I'm realizing as I'm writing this is I'm churning up so much of my own unresolved stuff. And I laughed because it's so true. Like, we keep things, I don't want to say we keep them buried, but we forget that they're there, and they're not the things that we wake up in the morning and think, I think I'll address that about myself today. But when we're writing nonfiction, specific or memoir, either way, and memoir technically is nonfiction, but I think of it more as you're telling a story, whereas nonfiction, sometimes you're including stories while you're sharing a message. So that's where the difference for me is between story and memoir. Happy to debate it, but that's just my perspective on that. At any rate, I thought it was interesting because what happens sometimes, and I cautioned Dawn to this so that it doesn't happen to her, and I said, hey, reach out if it does, is sometimes when we're writing our message or our story in a memoir form, we think, holy cow, I have so much unresolved stuff to take care of that I feel like a fraud writing this book. Because people are going to come to me and want me to help them work their way through whatever this is. And now all of a sudden I'm realizing I'm not completely sure. I clearly haven't worked through this. Not the whole thing. You've obviously worked through the whole thing if you're writing a book about it. But there may be a little component that you think, gosh, that really triggers me, as my kids would say, and I don't know why, and I need to figure that out. But here's the thing. That right there is what will make your readers love you. Because nobody's looking for an expert who knows how to do everything and has no flaws and no issues and is 100% on the other side of their challenge and never struggles. Nobody's attracted to that. Why? Because it's not relatable. Nobody can identify with it. Now, there's a fine line between getting down into the muck with your readers and staying in a place of empowerment and motivation, because you have to remember who you are for them. You are their guide. You are the person to whom they look to. They looks to. That's great grammar. I'm 2 sips of coffee in, people, so bear with me. You are the person they look to for guidance and support and advice, and to be a step ahead of them. There's the old adage, surround yourself with people who are a step ahead or better than you. I don't want to say better than you, but they've gotten to a point beyond you in a certain area. And so you surround yourself with them because you want to lift yourself up in this life and not bring yourself down. Okay? So that is your role, is to help bring them up. Now, you may learn things from them and they may learn things from you, but unless they become a very, very close friend, it becomes dangerous if they're here and you allow them to pull you down here. So there's a fine line, but I can tell you 100% that what people most identify with is someone where they can go, oh my gosh, she's been there. It's like she's in my mind. It's like she's in my living room. It's like he's been exactly where I am. And because he was where I am, I can now get to where he or she is. So there's nothing fraudulent about, here's what's fraudulent. I remember when I used to do morning shows when I published Ready or Not, Here We Come, for the guide for new parents of twins. And my byline underneath my name on the morning shows was parenting expert. And I was like, you guys, you have to change that. I know that appeals to people who are like for a hot second, but there's no such thing as a parenting expert. And the minute that people look at me and think that I've got it all figured out, number one, I've lost them. Second of all, when they see me in Target and my kid is flailing in aisle 5, I will have lost them because then I become a fraud. So be honest about where you've been, be honest about where you are, and be most honest about where you're going and what your strategies are for getting there, whether in business or in life. And your readers will identify that. They will be empowered and inspired by it, and it will lift them up. And that will make them love you. And that is the best part of all of it, is sharing your message and making a positive impact on someone else's life. So again, I'm going to post the link to sign up for the webinar today in the comments underneath. I would absolutely love, love, love to have you join us. It's only going to be about 45 minutes of content followed by a 10 to 15 minute Q&A because I know you guys don't have a lot of time. And I want to make the most of it. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me, email me, private message me, whatever. And I look forward to seeing you this afternoon.